internationally in rowing, cycling, triathlons, and ultra marathons. That's a lot, right? Wait, there's more. He has written 2 academic textbooks, worked on an award-winning documentary film, and written several best-selling books that have been translated into multiple languages. He has been on the TED stage, featured on Dr. Oz show, the Ask Dr. Nandi show, and has been invited to the White House. In addition to all of that, he's learning Pidgin, and has discovered local delicacies like Cocoa Puffs from Liliha Bakery.
They are dangerous.
What I find most impressive about him is that he can geek out about the scientific stuff with the academic community, but he also makes science fun and easy for anyone to understand. I learn something new from him every time I hear him speak, and you are in for a real treat today. Without further ado, Dr. Shawn Talbott.
Well, hey, you guys. It's great to see you this morning. Oh, excellent. Thank you very much. Aloha. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here this morning. I'm going to talk for about an hour-ish, right? We know that, so this session goes till 11, right? So we want to make sure you get out on time. I could literally talk about each individual product that we have for an hour. We have 22 products, right? So that's going to be a long time that we're all going to be sitting here together. So I won't do that. What I'm going to do this morning is give a sort of a very broad overview of this idea of mental wellness, but from a perspective that maybe some of you have heard before, or maybe you've not heard before. From the perspective of how you feel is not just in your head, it's also in your gut. This idea of us having 2 brains. How many people have ever heard that before, that we have 2 brains? Mm-hmm. A handful of hands. How many people have ever heard that we have 3 brains? Less hands, but still a couple hands went up. Whenever I ask that, you can see people kind of looking and going, 2 brains? 3 brains? I know people who don't have 1 brain. So there's some explanation that needs to happen there. So what we're going to talk about is how what happens in the gut influences what happens in the brain, how what happens in the heart, which is the 3rd brain, how that influences what happens in the brain, how all of that can improve mental wellness, and how improving mental wellness can actually improve physical health. There's a lot of sort of linkage between how we feel and how we perform on a lot of different levels. So I'm going to give you sort of an overview of that kind of stuff. Later on this afternoon after lunch, we're going to have what we're calling a deep dive, where if you want to learn more about the nitty-gritty and the details of how these products work and what's in them and other products in our 22 product line, come back afterwards and we can really geek out if you want to. I can show you some scientific data slides and things like that. So I probably just scared away everybody for the after the lunch meeting. But here, Amare, the company that I represent, is the mental wellness company. We're the only company in the world that is exclusively focused on mental wellness. Do you guys think that's a big problem in the world, mental wellness issues? Yeah, I can see people who are just giggling, right? Because you know how predominant a problem that is. I'll show you some statistics around that in just a little bit. But when we started the company, we thought about it and we went, mental wellness is quite literally the biggest problem globally around the world today. Why is nobody addressing it? Why is nobody full on going after that as a target? Because it's such a big problem. And does anyone care to guess why? Why has no one done this before? It's not like this is a brand new problem. Stigma has been a big part of it. I've been studying this area for about 20 years. I specialize in an area of psychology called psychological vigor. In psychology research, vigor is the opposite state from burnout. And so if you're burned out, your vigor is low. Vigor is a combination of physical energy, mental acuity, and emotional well-being, all wrapped up into one thing. So we can measure vigor, we can measure depression separately, we can measure anxiety separately, we can measure brain fog separately, we can, all these different mood states. And 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, it used to be really difficult for us to recruit people for the research studies that we were doing. For that exact reason, people didn't want to sort of raise their hand or call in on a flyer that they saw at the health clinic about and say, hey, I saw this flyer for the study you're doing on depression. Yeah, I think I want to sign up for that. No, like, people didn't want to volunteer for that kind of thing. Nowadays, it's a lot different. In fact, the last trial that we did, where we were looking for people that we call healthy stressed, people who just have stress in their lives and they're not really diagnosed with any problems, we filled that in basically 2 days, because everybody will vote and say, yeah, I have a lot of stress. I want to solve that. So the stigma was a big piece of it. There's also an aspect of there really weren't good natural ways that we could improve mental wellness until just very recently, right? So the science has changed pretty significantly, and that's a lot of what I'm going to focus on for the next hour that we have together. So here's our vision at Amari. We want to lead what we think is this coming global mental wellness revolution, right? That for a variety of reasons that I'll get into, it seems like this is the perfect time to start talking about these issues. The stigma is coming down a little bit. The science is changing. Lots of people are starting to look for other kinds of options, versus the sort of standard things that are on offer right now. So we want to be at the very, very front of that. And the way that we're doing that, our mission, is to create a whole platform of products, which I'm going to focus on mostly today, but also programs and also connections with people. So right now in this room, this is the people part of it. The fact that we can all come together as a group and talk about it and share what works and share what our challenges are, and that people piece is a really, really important part of this overall puzzle. So much so that what we're really trying to do is to try to stitch them all together. We know that having better social connections can improve mental wellness. We know it can reduce depression, we know it can reduce anxiety, we know it can improve overall happiness and well-being. They're really, really good, large, long-term studies that show that. In fact, if you look at studies like the Harvard longevity study, right, that's been following people for decades and decades about what kinds of things in their lifestyle lead to physical health, not having diseases, but also quality of life, the number one thing that emerges from that is that social connections is the one thing that far and away leads to better quality of life, better happiness scores in these people, right? So that's a very, very important piece, the people piece. We don't want to leave that aside if we know that can be very effective in helping people with their mental wellness. Likewise, programs. We know we have really good data to show that movement, right? Just moving your body, just contracting your muscles, not even trying to become fit, but just getting out there and moving increases your mental wellness, right? It reduces depression, it reduces anxiety. Exercise programs have been shown to be more effective initially and more effective long-term than any of the antidepressants that are out there. Programs like eating the right way, right? I'm a proponent of something called the Mediterranean diet, right? Which is very analogous to a traditional Hawaiian diet, which is very analogous to a traditional Okinawan diet. We've talked about that before, which is very analogous to a traditional Scandinavian diet, right? So it's all these sort of traditional diets have been shown to be more effective compared to a standard American diet, right? A Western diet, in alleviating depression, alleviating anxiety. So with that as sort of a background, if we know that moving can be effective, if we know that eating the right way can be effective, if we know that breath work and gratitude journals and mindfulness and meditation and those sorts of things can all be very effective, why would we leave that aside and only do vitamins or only do herbal products, right? Does that make sense to you guys? And so what we're really trying to do, we've only been selling the products for around 2 years, right? So we're a very, very new company. So most of what I'm going to talk about today are the products, because that's sort of our first step into the world. But what we want to eventually do is be able to stitch all of these together in a way that's a little more nuanced than just saying like, hey, here's some programs that you can choose from, and here's some products you can choose from, and here's some meetups that we're having around the country that you can choose from. We really want to try to synergistically combine them for people. So, by doing studies and asking you questions and taking measurements from you and tracking your progress over time, we might be able to figure out what uniquely combination of these things works for you, and then based on artificial intelligence and things like that, figure out how to change your makeup. So you might start with this set of products, and then after a little while, we're going to switch that to another set of products. And we're going to combine those products with certain programs that might work for you, but not for you, based on where you're starting and where you want to go. So that's the kind of stuff that we're trying to do. And we think that the timing for this is particularly enticing or interesting right now because a lot of things are coming together at the same time. So we're a very young company. We've been selling products for about 2 years. We've been around for about 3.5 years. We have some unique products that we'll talk about in a little bit. These unique products are based on some very, very new science. This piece is a little bit of a lucky break for Amare, to be perfectly honest. When we got together, 3.5 years ago, and decided we wanted to be the mental wellness company to full-on address this issue or these issues, we kind of looked at the science and went, aha! The science is uniquely changing in a way that allows us to address these mental wellness issues in ways that we couldn't just a very short few years ago. So when we talk about the microbiome, we couldn't even really measure the microbiome the way that we can measure it today 5 years ago, right? So like a lot of the things that we're doing weren't possible before. And so we're sort of in a unique timing situation. We also have this issue of, it's always been a big problem. I've been doing this kind of work for, like I said, about 20 years. And I would sometimes put up a list of things, diseases. World Health Organization says these are the top diseases around the globe. And what do you think would be on that list?
Cancer.
Cancer, yes. Definitely top 10. Heart disease, definitely top 10. Diabetes, obesity, depression. So the sort of mental wellness issues, we lump them into one box. So depression and anxiety and burnout and stress all go into that one box, and we call them mental wellness issues. That would always be in the top 10 somewhere, right? And so doing this presentation all around the country, I'd say, yes, mental wellness issues are number 6 this year, and then the next year they'd be number 5, and then the next year they'd go back to 6, and then they'd jump to number 3. But I would always tell people, I'd go, yep, see that mental wellness issue? That is going to be the number 1 issue in 2030, right? That's what the statistics are showing us. It's a big problem affecting hundreds of millions of people who spend hundreds of billions of dollars, and it's getting, big problem, but it's getting a little bit worse, a little bit worse, a little bit worse. 2030, it's going to become number 1. 2018, it became number 1. Right? Very soon after we started the company, right? So is that good news or bad news?
Bad.
Yeah, it's bad news for everybody because we're all in the same boat together, but it was good news from a company perspective to say, yeah, we're in the right place. We're addressing the right issues. And then this, I think, is going to help us tell our story, this social shift that's going on right now. The stigma that we talked about just a few minutes ago. This is starting to change. People are starting to openly talk about this, and I'll get back to that a little bit. So all of that together makes this a good place to be. So April gave me this very nice introduction, so I don't have to go through any of this kind of stuff. But just so you know, the sort of perspective that I have on this area. So I've studied mental wellness issues for a long, long time. What sometimes these days is called nutritional psychology or nutritional psychiatry. That's the kind of work that I do. But I do it from the perspective of being a nutritional biochemist. So, if I take a group of people and I take them off of the standard American diet and I put them on a Mediterranean style diet where they're eating more fiber and they're eating more phytonutrients and they have healthier fats and all that kind of stuff, less processed foods, less sugar, I want to look at the biochemistry of that and see what's changing in their bodies. What is their blood sugar level doing now? What is their neurotransmitters doing? What are their stress hormones doing? What is their level of their inflammatory markers and all that kind of stuff? But then take that biochemistry and see how that biochemistry changes the psychology. How does it change their stress levels? How does it change their mental focus? How does it change their energy levels? That kind of stuff. So that's the kind of work all that mumbo jumbo up there talks about. Before I start getting into what we're doing with the products and how they work and how they're different, I want to just frame what we're all talking about. So they're all talking the same language. When I say mental wellness, what's the first thing that pops into your head?
Happiness.
Good for you. Your head is not a normal head because most heads what pops in is what? Let's set you aside for 1 second. If I say mental wellness, all right, illness, yeah. As soon as you say mental, people don't even get the wellness part of it. As soon as you say mental, people start to think, oh, problem, oh, depression, oh, illness, right? And we really want people to be more inclined to say exactly what you said, so thank you for doing that. That mental wellness is this all-encompassing kind of thing where it's not just problems. It can be problems, but the idea is we're going towards a wellness indication. And so what we really want people to focus on is, do you want better mental focus? Do you want better energy levels? Do you want better physical performance? You know, the work that I did when I was a sport nutritionist was to try to get athletes, elite level athletes, to get 0.5% more out of their physical performance. And the way that we did that was not by getting them to exercise harder. We got it from here. We got them to get their mental fitness in line. And if their mental fitness in line, their physical performance was better, right? Almost across the board. When you guys watch the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo this summer, the people who are understand this, the people who are on the podium, gold medal, silver medal, bronze medal, they're not any more fit than the people who came in 4th or 5th or the people who didn't even qualify for the finals. Their physical fitness is all pretty equivalent. The people who were on the podium had superiority here in their mental fitness. They were able to keep going. They were able to not fade away when their competition faded away. They were able to control their stress levels so that they didn't choke. There's all kinds of things that are going on up here. So, you know, I say all of that because, you know, you look at that, everybody should want that, right? Nobody should look at what we're doing and go, oh, that's not for me. You know, I don't have those mental issues. Of course you do. We all do, right? We're all in that boat. We should all want to sort of optimize where we are. And that's why we really talk about it within the context of this, what we call the mental wellness continuum. That every single person is somewhere on here. You might be high, medium, or low, and your objective ought to be to first of all, figure out where you are, and then figure out what your next step is. Because it's not saying that we're going to go find all the depressed people, and within a short amount of time, we're going to bring them all to this optimized zone, right? That's ridiculous. That's not doable. But we could take somebody who's a 2 or a 3, and we could have a conversation about how do we get you to be a 4 or a 5, so you feel like your normal self again. Or we could get someone who's here in this sort of middle zone and just feels, well, let me ask you guys, somebody who's in this normal zone, if I went up to them and I knew that they were a 5 or a 6 on this sort of 1 to 10 scale, and I just asked them, how are you doing today?
Fine.
What do you think they would say? Fine, I'm okay, you know, I'm doing all right. I'm living the dream, you know, you get why you guys can say stuff like that, you know. I had a guy one time who says to me in an elevator, he's like, another day above ground is a good day. And I was just like, oh my gosh, dude, you know, that can't be all it is, right? You know, those people, I want them to come up to be a 7 or an 8, because now they feel as good as they've ever felt, probably. This is where I used to work with the athletes. You know, if you have a downhill skier who is a 9, where do you think she wants to be?
11.
She wants to be an 11. That's exactly where she wants to be. Yeah, so like, you know, if you're going to go ripping down the hill at 90 miles an hour, you want to be able to be in the zone, right? Otherwise you're in big trouble. So the whole idea is to get people to go step by step by step to where they want to be. And we really need to explain to people how you feel is not just in your head, it's also in your gut, and it's also in your heart. And I'm going to explain more about what I mean by that. How in the world can what's happening in your gut affect your brain? How in the world can what's happening in your heart affect your brain? We're going to talk a little bit about the sort of nuance of that, and how we measure that. And since we can measure it, then we can modulate it naturally and sort of get it going in the right direction. And you can do this naturally in a lot of really, really effective ways. So with that as sort of the setup, right? It's not just about the low part of the mental wellness continuum, but that's where most of the options are for people. Up until a very few years ago, if anybody was sort of middle to lower on that mental wellness continuum, the only quote-unquote solutions that were out there for them were these kinds of things. They were pharmaceuticals, They were things that we might self-medicate with, you know. So I was looking around the room as these were animating up there, and like when your thing comes up onto the screen, you can see people just kind of smile, or they elbow the person next to them, or we could put junk foods up here, we could put alcohol up here, we could put there's a lot of things that we'll self-medicate with to change how we feel. And the things that you see up here, you know, the Prozacs and the Lexapros and the Lunestas to help you sleep, so antidepressants, anti-anxieties, sleep drugs, even ADD drugs, they do not do a very good job of taking you from feeling bad to feeling good. They generally do a decent job of taking you from feeling bad in one way and feeling bad in another way, right? So they change how you feel, for sure, but they don't get you to where you're typically going, right? But if that's the only thing that you have on offer, that's what you get. You know, and I have a lot of friends who are physicians who it's very frustrating for them because they have a patient, or friends who are nutritionists and nurse practitioners and things like that. They have a patient or a client who doesn't feel good, and they want to help that person feel better, and that's what there is, right? So that's what you end up getting. So I won't, like, I'm not an anti-pharmaceutical guy, but there's millions and millions of people who are on these kinds of drugs that aren't getting the solutions that they're looking for, aren't feeling the way they want to feel, and are getting a whole bunch of other side effects that they probably don't want. You know, problems with their energy, problems with weight gain, problems with sex drive, problems with all kinds of different problems, side effects, and they would trade that out. They would go to something natural that doesn't have the side effects if there was something on offer, and there wasn't until just very recently. And we'll talk about what those are. So I mentioned this already. World Health Organization has been talking for years that this is one of the biggest problems in the world today, what is called global disease burden. Stress is really a health epidemic in and of itself. So whether we label it as stress or we label it as depression, however we sort of define that, it's all the same bucket of stuff. And if there's a silver lining to the fact that it's gotten as bad as quickly, it's that people are starting to talk about it now in a way that they never did before. We see it in mainstream magazines. You hear it on the radio. You see it. You know, there was one week a couple of months ago where CBS Morning Show did a whole week on mental wellness at the same time that it was front page on People magazine, and that it was the front page of somewhere else. Maybe it was when Oprah and Prince Harry announced they were doing their mental wellness documentary that's coming out this year at some point, right? So I mean, that really raises the conversation around these issues. We also see things like this. So there's Oprah. Here's Michael Phelps. You know, I talk to a lot of men's groups about mental wellness issues, right? And you wanna be shocked about. Typically, men don't want to talk about this kind of stuff, right? Ever. When I talk to a men's group, at the very beginning, I'll say, "Hey, I'm here. I'm going to talk about mental wellness issues," and everybody gets really interested in their shoelaces. Okay? Looking around, and no one wants to look at me anymore, right? And I'm like, "Come on, guys, up here. You know, we're going to talk about this kind of stuff." But look, Bruce Springsteen, Jay-Z, Michael Phelps, you've got a lot of NBA players that are talking about their challenges with anxiety and things like that. The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. I mean, what has The Rock got to be anxious about, right? He's wealthy, he's charming, he's gorgeous, he's got an awesome haircut, doesn't he? Right? So I'm almost there with The Rock. But he's been very open about his own challenges, right? And I think that's great. Not that he has those challenges, but that somebody like that can go, you know, like I can look at Michael Phelps and go, if Michael Phelps wanted to commit suicide after the last Olympics, that sort of gives me permission to say, yeah, maybe I want to talk more about these mental wellness issues. Maybe I want to look and see what options are available to me to help me feel better, right? So I'll leave that there. So the rest of the part of this is gonna talk about some of the science around this. The whole idea of mental wellness is undergoing a fundamental change right now, right? Because we used to think it was just a head thing, just a brain thing. And now we have a much broader view to say that what's happening in the brain really starts in the gut. How many people have heard of the microbiome before? Oh, good number of people. When we started doing this a few years ago, I'd say, how many people have ever heard of the microbiome? And it'd be like crickets out there. Nobody had heard about it. You know, and I'd have to explain, not every hand went up, so I'll just explain quickly what the microbiome is. The microbiome is the collection of bacteria in our guts, 100 trillion or so bacteria, that produce a lot of the signaling molecules that help us feel the way that we feel. So probably 90% of our serotonin is made in our gut. Do you guys know what? Somebody tell me what serotonin is good for. Happiness. It's sort of the happiness neurotransmitter, right? That's the neurotransmitter that most of the Prozac-style drugs primarily work on in the brain. But if 90% of it's made in the gut, maybe we should look at the gut first as a way to help us feel better. But probably 70% of the dopamine in our bodies is made in our gut. Dopamine's the neurotransmitter that helps us with motivation. Most of our norepinephrine that helps us focus. Most of the GABA that helps us relax when we're tense and stressed out. All that stuff is made in the gut, plus a whole bunch of other things. So we think of the gut as this, like, almost this internal pharmacy that should be making all of these bioactive compounds that change how we feel physically and mentally. So microbiome is really, really important. That's a big part of the second brain idea. The third brain is the heart. The heart's not making your neurotransmitters. Heart can make neurotransmitters, but most of the signals that are coming from the heart are more electrical in nature. So your heart has a rhythm that we can measure. Your brain also has an electrical activity that we can measure. We measure those, we call them brain waves. We measure the heart's electrical activity, we call it heart rhythm. But they're the same thing. And if they're out of sync with each other, you won't feel good. You won't have good physical performance. If they're in sync with each other, you see physical performance benefits and you see mental performance benefits. I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. So we're thinking of this second brain in the gut as just a place that's making information that the brain in our head is picking up on. Same thing with the heart, different kind of information. Does it make sense to you guys so far?
Yes.
Okay, so from that perspective, one of the things that I love about how quickly this science is progressing is that all this stuff around heart-brain axis and gut-brain axis, it's becoming mainstream news almost immediately when it comes out. This is something that doesn't typically happen. A lot of times, new scientific discovery will stay in the scientific journals for years and years, and in some cases decades, before it kind of trickles out into the public awareness. Nowadays, a new microbiome study comes out, and you're hearing about it on the news that day, and it's in a magazine article, and then you have a newspaper clipping, and then so it's progressing really, really quickly. And the reason that's exciting is that as this research is accelerating, it gives us more tools to latch onto to say, that's a great idea, let's take that and let's build it into a product that somebody can actually get a benefit out of, right? It's interesting that the microbiome is doing all this kind of stuff, but if it weren't to the point where we could actually harness it and put it into a product, it wouldn't benefit anybody, right? It would just be a bunch of scientists talking around to each other and saying, oh yes, Dr. Talbott, very interesting data you have there. That doesn't help anybody, right? That's great for scientific conferences, which I go to a lot, but if we can build it into something that someone can actually just plug into their life, that's where it really becomes meaningful. Okay, so let's talk about how important the microbiome is. The microbiome it's almost impossible to overstate how important we're finding the microbiome is. It quite literally is involved in every aspect of every human health condition, whether you want to frame it as a disease indication or a health indication. So mental wellness and physical wellness. And the reason for that is that what happens in the gut doesn't stay in the gut, right? When the microbiome produces those compounds, they go up and they have signaling effects throughout the entire rest of the body. Some of them are things that are going to, sort of get absorbed across the gut lining and get into your systemic circulation, and they're going to flow through the bloodstream to where they need to go. Sometimes the signals will go direct hard wires because there are nerves that connect the gut to the brain. And of every 10 signals, probably 9 of them go from the gut to the brain, and 1 goes back down from the brain to the gut. So there's a lot of signaling going back and forth here. So it can get really, really complicated when we start measuring the microbiome and measuring the signals and measuring an outcome like a depression state or a focus index. But the bottom line is really as simple as this. If you're in balance, you're going to feel good, right? And that feel good we can measure. Like, we can measure different ways of global well-being. We can measure quality of life. We can measure happiness indexes. We can measure stress resilience. We can measure a variety of different ways to find out if somebody is in balance and reaping the benefits of that. If you're out of balance, you have the wrong levels of bacteria. Too many bad bacteria producing the wrong signals, not enough good bacteria sending the right signals. You're out of balance. You're not getting the right signals, and then you don't feel good. And that don't feel good could exhibit itself as fatigue. So you could just be tired all day, right? You could be a standard person who's in the middle of that mental wellness continuum, who in the daytime is just kind of like, oh, I'm exhausted. I need another coffee. I need some gummy bears, for the sugar. I need, you're dragging yourself through the day with fatigue. And then you would think that person would just, at nighttime, would just fall right asleep and get the deepest sleep of their entire life because they've been so tired all day long. You're already shaking your head. And you know exactly where I'm going with this. What happens as soon as their head hits the pillow? Yeah, their head's going, they're tense, they're anxious, they're worrying about what happened today, they're worried about what's going to happen tomorrow, so they don't get a good night's sleep, their stress hormones go up. That's not a good place to be. Daytime fatigue, nighttime tenseness. You might have signals that are coming out of your microbiome that are telling you, you know what? Doritos would taste really good right now. Right? Or chocolate, or Big Macs, or whatever, right? Because, well, how does that happen? Does anyone know how you get that Doritos signal in your brain? It's coming from your gut.
Body wants salt or fat, minerals.
Could be salt or fat, yep. It's also because, so typically what happens is someone's been eating Doritos, right? Anyone want to volunteer? No one eats Doritos in here? Okay, everybody eats Doritos, come on. And once in a while, right? Once you feed your gut, once you eat something, it's going to feed a certain class of bacteria. So you're eating Doritos all the time. You're in essence nourishing the kind of bacteria that thrive on Doritos. So you have a population of Doritos loving bacteria in your gut. Honestly, when they get hungry, every time they get hungry, they're going to send a signal to the brain that is just saying, we're hungry, but your brain interprets that as, you know what? Doritos would taste really good right now. And then and so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? That's where you get hungry. That's where you get stress cravings. That's where you get, junk food eaters are junk food eaters. They're junk food cravers because the bacteria are wanting that. So I tell people, if we can take people out of that situation and put them on more salads and more salmon and less processed foods, pretty soon you're going to get more cravings for kale. No, you're never going to crave kale. No one in the history of humans ever got a craving for kale. You do? But at least your junk food cravings will subside, will go down. And this is something we see all the time with one of our products called Fundamentals. It works on changing the gut bacteria. And people will come back to us a month or 2 months or 3 months later and go, hey, I lost weight. I have to keep pulling up my pants because and I wasn't trying to diet. I wasn't doing anything different. I was just doing the fundamentals for the gut-brain axis stuff. And we walk them through that. Or they'll realize, you know what? Every night before I go to bed, I have my thing, I have my bowl of ice cream. I have my little pile of cookies. I have my, whatever my snack is. And I haven't been reaching for that snack as often, and it's all because this is changing, but it often changes at a subconscious level, which is fine, you don't have to be aware that you're not eating Oreos as much as you were before. That's a good thing. So we see that kind of thing all the time. So what we're trying to do for people is to take them out of this balance and put them back into good balance. And when you do that, you reap a lot of those benefits. Okay, I mentioned a little bit already about this, the gut brain, the head brain, and the heart brain. They all sort of specialize in their own areas. But if we can coordinate the signals coming out of these two, going up to this one, then we're gonna perform better in all those different ways. And so it's important to just spend 1 minute on this concept. So there's things that we can do naturally across our product line to help the brain. I don't want people to think that the brain isn't important anymore. It's just that it's not the only target. It's still an important target. So we're going to do things in the brain. We're also going to do things in the gut. We're also going to do things in the heart. But then we can also do things in between those in what we call the axis. So when we talk about the gut-brain-heart axis, we're really talking about 4 different targets for us to modulate how you feel. If we just focused on the axis, which is the communication network that links those brains together, some of it is in the nervous system, some of it's in the cardiovascular system, a lot of it is in the immune system. If we could just get the axis to be more efficient at carrying those signals between the brains, that in and of itself can help people feel better. And we've done some trials there. So for example, if you can prime the immune system, so your immune system is a better surveillance organ, it's much better able to send the communication across the body. Kind of like the Pony Express, right? The immune system grabs some information from the gut and brings it up to the brain, finds out what's happening in the brain, brings that down to the heart, finds out what's happening there, brings that out to your thyroid gland or your adrenals or your stress response system or whatever. All of that signaling is really, really important. And so, that can get, a lot of what I just said can get a little abstract and a little esoteric sometimes. People are like, whatever, you lost me. But remember what I said before, that the importance of where the science is right now is that it's to a point where we can just say, yep, that's what we learned from the science, this is how we measure it, this is how we modulate it, let's build it into a thing that somebody who doesn't even care about the science, can just say, all right, there's a lot of science there, I'm going to give it a try. And then when you try it, because we are a mental wellness company, we have to be able to stand behind our products and say to somebody, try any one of those products up there and you're going to feel better, right? And I'll put that in quotes. You're going to feel better because you'll feel better in different ways. One of these products might help you feel better because your physical pain is lower. One of these products might help you feel better because you're getting better sleep quality. One of them might be because it's changing the bacteria in your gut. You're getting better signals. One might be, you guys get the idea. Those are all different ways that we can help people feel better. And as a mental wellness company, if you're not feeling better, we're dead in the water, right? So the products have to work. We have a really good money-back guarantee so that we can say, look, the science is there, you're going to feel better, no risk to you, give it a try. If it doesn't work for you, we'll give you your money back. In fact, if it doesn't work for you, we'll give you your money back and we'll encourage you to try something else because we know something is going to work up here. We do a lot of that kind of stuff to try to really encourage people to find the right regimen of products that are going to work for them. Okay? Makes sense so far? So this is our product line. It's built into different families. I'm gonna spend the rest of my time this morning focusing on this, which is 4 products, one for the gut, one for the brain, one for the axis in between, and one for the heart. Okay, so we've got three brains and the axis in between. This is called our fundamentals pack. Okay, this is in a lot of ways this is our flagship product because it does so much, because it works across the entire gut-brain axis, heart-brain axis, but also because this was not possible before. It was not possible 3 years ago. It was just barely possible 3 years ago when we started. And when we launched this product at the beginning of 2018, the Fundamentals Pack, and it won this award in the natural products industry called the Nutra Award. Nutra Award is given once a year to one company for one product that product represents the best finished product across the entire natural products industry. So it's never ever been given to a startup. It's never been given to a network marketing company. And it's not just a scientific award either. Science is part of it, right? They look at your ingredients, they look at your quality control, they look at your research, they look at your packaging, but they also look at, is this an emerging category? Is this something that's not a fad, right? Is this something that's that's new and that's going to be growing for decades and decades to come? And microbiome and gut-brain axis and mental wellness checks that box over and over again. Okay, so we felt really, really, really good to win that award. But before I step into what each individual product does, people will look at this fundamentals pack sometimes, and we joke around at the company sometimes when somebody comes in and says, hey, well, my issues are XYZ. We go, fundamentals pack. And then they'll say, oh, well, my issues are ABC. Fundamentals pack. My issues are fundamentals pack, right? A lot of people come back to this because it does so much. And I want to give you a flavor for what this product does, what this product does, what this product does. But when you put them all together in that sort of coordinated system, that's where you start to see some of the magic happens, because that gut-brain axis idea, it's not in isolation, right? So when we look at the gut product, Mentabiotics, remember what I said before, what happens in the gut doesn't stay in the gut? This is primarily working in the gut on your microbiome, but it's having effects in your brain. We can't keep that from happening. This product, Mentafocus, works primarily in the brain as a starting point, but because you have better focus and you have better energy levels and you have better motivation, you're probably going to be more physically active, and that's going to be good for other parts of your body. This one, Mentasync, works primarily in your axis, so it's helping with gut integrity, it's helping with immune system priming, but because your immune system is better, that's happening, that's giving you benefits throughout your entire body. So it's hard to really artificially say that it only does one thing, but each one of these on its own, if you only took one of them and didn't take it as a pack, would help you feel better, right? You'd feel better in that particular way. And I'll give you some more details on that as we go through here. Okay, before I dive into the details of these products, are there any questions? No? Okay. All right, so Mentabiotics. So this is a powder product, this unflavored powder. You can mix it into juice, you can mix it into tea, you can mix it into your oatmeal, your smoothies, whatever you want to do. People ask us sometimes, hey, could you put this in capsules instead? I'd rather just swallow it. Does anyone know why we don't put this in capsules?
For absorption?
No, it's not an absorption thing. It could be absorbed perfectly fine if we put it in capsules. It's a volume thing. Yeah, if we put it in one capsule, it'd be about the size of a golf ball. Yeah, no one wants that. And if we put it in regular size capsules, it'd be 8, 10, 12 capsules, because a big part of what we have here is this are these prebiotic fibers, which are really bulky. So they just take up a lot of space, right? So it has to be a powder. In that powder is a combination of probiotics, prebiotics, and what we call phytobiotics. It also helps with digestive performance, so there's some herbs in there, a patented blend of artichoke extract and ginger root extract that help with gut motility. So it'll help the food move through your gastrointestinal tract at the appropriate speed. It's not a laxative, it just helps your gut to digest and absorb. So what are probiotics? You guys have all heard of probiotics before, right? It's the hottest thing in nutrition these days. What are probiotics?
Good bacteria.
Good bacteria, right. So these are specific good bacteria that we have in here. Does anyone take a probiotic now? Like a non-Amari probiotic? Anyone? Does anyone care to tell me how you chose your probiotic? I made the mistake one time of just picking on somebody. She raised her hand and I went, oh, yeah, tell me how you picked your probiotic. And she went, it was on sale. I was like, that's a terrible reason. That's the worst of all the reasons. Anyone want to share like how you chose your probiotic? I'm just like legitimately curious all the time. Yeah.
I was just out of holistic nutrition school. And
That's cheating. You know something about nutrition. Okay, so go ahead.
For me, being dairy-free was important.
Yeah.
And then just clean ingredients, like nothing that looked like unnecessary extras.
Okay. How about you guys? Yeah, in the back there.
sale.
What's that? It was on sale.
I raised my hand again.
That's awesome. You too?
No, refrigerated the number of probiotics that were in it. I chose a reputable brand as well, Garden of Life.
Nice. Yeah, Garden of Life actually does make some good brands. Garden of Life is one of the few companies out there that will actually tell you the strain that they're using in the product.
And the difference in strains too. They have multiple strains.
Yeah, there's a huge difference in strains, right? That's sort of what I'm leading up to this. Is people will just go to the probiotic shelf and they go, They'll only choose it on the first two things that you said, right? You can watch them, pull them off, and they'll look at this one, and you can see they're thinking in their head, oh, this one has 2 billion something. It's called CFUs, colony forming units. It's sort of the strength of the probiotic. And then they'll look at the next one, they'll go, oh, this has 5 billion. And they'll pick up the next one, and they'll go, this one has 50 billion. Which one do you think they buy? 50 billion. Why? Why?
More is better.
Because more is better, right? Exactly. Or they'll look and they'll go, oh, this one only has 2 different ones. This one has Lactobacillus acidophilus and Bifidobacterium bifidum. This one has, oh my gosh, there's like 10 different ones. I'll get that one because, again, more is better. That is not the way to choose it. What you want to do is choose it based on the strain. And most products, Garden of Life is a good example at the health food. 90% of the products out there don't even tell you the strain, right? And I'll come back to this on the next slide why that's important. Okay, refrigerated. Some need to be refrigerated. Some don't need to be refrigerated. These guys just happen to not need to be refrigerated. They're perfectly stable at room temperature. I could put these in a UPS truck that's 140 degrees in the back that's delivering it to you guys in July, and it will be perfectly fine. You probably couldn't cook with these, so I wouldn't put these in your chocolate chip cookie recipe and try to, put it in the 350 degree oven. That would definitely kill it, but pretty good stability. Some strains need to be protected from stomach acid, right? So sometimes you have to put them in capsules that survive stomach acid and don't release until they get past the stomach acid. These happen to be okay in stomach acid. We have other strains in a product up here called probiotics that do not do well in stomach acid. And so that product we do have to put in an acid-resistant capsule, right? So there's all those kinds of considerations when you're choosing which probiotics to use. How about prebiotics? Does anybody know what that is? Food. Prebiotics are typically fibers that the probiotic bacteria use as their food, right? Humans can't digest these, but they're still good for us because they're good for our bacteria. And if we feed the bacteria the right food, they're our healthy pets, right? Now they're going to be friendly to us, and they're going to produce more serotonin and more dopamine, and we're going to feel good because of that. And then this idea of phytobiotics, this is something Amari is really pioneering. The idea that we can identify specific plant extracts that can help the probiotics survive and have better metabolism. So I'll talk about that when we get through there. But just that one product is a lot built into one product. And the only one thing that tends to irritate me is when somebody is like, oh, probiotics. I'm eating yogurt. I'm good. I'm okay. I don't need any of that kind of stuff. Right? We still want people to do their fermented foods and eat their fibers and have all that kind of stuff, but this is very, very targeted therapy that you're not going to find anywhere else. Okay? So when I talk about that idea of strain specificity, this is a big deal. Very, very few companies even subscribe to this aspect of science because they just don't know any better. So in that Mentabiotics blend, we have 3 different strains that are specific mental wellness strains. So people will sometimes say to me, like, wow, are those the only 3 strains that have ever been studied for mental wellness? And I say, no, there's probably a dozen that have really good benefits, what are called psychobiotics, bacteria that have known quantified psychological effects in humans. And they say, well, how come you're only using these 3? How come you don't use any of those other, however many, 10 or 15, however many extra ones there are? And I use these for the reasons that I just said. These are stable at room temperature. They don't need any special packaging for stomach acid. They have a fairly good shelf life. Some of those other ones, the other psychobiotic strains that have been studied, one of them only has a 2-week shelf life, right? So no good. Some of them have to be refrigerated. Some of them don't do well in stomach acid, et cetera, right? So, we sort of look at the scientific evidence, and then we look at the logistics of trying to deliver these to people on a mass scale. Does that make sense to you guys? So when we look at these guys, though, these have really, really good data in humans to help reduce stress, enhance calmness, improve mood. So if I gave you just one of those strains, you would, and I keep doing this, feel better. But it would depend on which one you took to figure out which way you're going to feel better. Is that logical to you guys?
Yes.
So why do you think we give all 3 of them?
more is better.
Touche. Let me add a little wrinkle to that. We want you to feel holistically better, right? So if someone's lower on that mental wellness continuum than they want to be, sometimes we don't actually know, are we feeling crappy because we're overstressed, or are we tense, or is our mood lower than it needs to be, right? So this way gives us a way to improve how someone feels in a holistic way. So we can almost guarantee if you supplement with these three, in fact we do guarantee, if you supplement with these three, you're going to feel better. And it's going to be a combination of your stress is lower, your calmness is better, your mood is higher. Does that make sense to you guys? But you're not going to get that with just any old strain. You're only going to get it with these strains. So genus, species, strain. The strain is always going to be like a letter or a number or some combination of letters and numbers after the Lactobacillus rhamnosus or the Lactobacillus acidophilus or the Bifidobacterium longum or the Bifidobacterium bifidum. There's all kinds of sort of Latin gobbledygook that you're going to see, but it's the strain that really makes the difference. And so one of the ways that I try to describe it is this. If you left at lunchtime, didn't come back, and you thought you'd swing by the store on the way home, and yeah, he said something about Lactobacillus rhamnosus something or other, and I'll just get that one when I get to the store, you would very likely pick up one called Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG, would be the strain designation. Almost every store carries it. It's actually a very good strain if you have traveler's diarrhea, right? So if you have gut issues and you're on the toilet a lot after you come back from a trip, you could go get Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG, and it's gonna slow your gut motility, right? So it's gonna have an anti-diarrhea effect. What if you're the person that goes to the store and you're looking for something to help with your constipation, and you choose that one instead, right? You choose the diarrhea one instead of the constipation one. You're gonna be in trouble, right? There are other ones that can help with weight loss. There are other ones that can help with sports recovery. There's others that can help with your immune system. There's others that can help with your inflammation. You know, it's a really, really cool area, but unless you know the strain, you have no idea what that product is supposed to be doing for you. And if they're not telling you the strain, probably doesn't do anything for you, because that company is not doing their due diligence to figure out what they're actually delivering to you. Okay, so I spent a little bit of time on that. It's a soapbox that I get up on sometimes because it's a really, really important concept that most people have no idea about. Okay, so are there any questions about the strains that we're using before we move on? Okay, we could just do that. These guys are little. Bacteria are little, right? We can't even see them. We could put these guys in a little capsule, and that could be the mental wellness solution for people, right? People would feel better. But we wanted to broaden the benefits package. And that's why we do a powder, and the reason we do a powder is because we have to deliver these guys, which are the prebiotic fibers. So same concept, 3 different prebiotic fibers because they work in different ways to improve different aspects of mental wellness. Sort of in the realm, I guess you would say, of stress resilience, right? So you saw on the first slide, we're lowering your stress and lowering your anxiety and lowering your depression. Here, we're increasing your resilience, which is subtly different, but importantly different than just lowering your stress. So there's ingredients that I can give you. Within 30 minutes, you can go, I think that's taken the edge off my stress, and that's awesome. But what I would also like to do is increase your resilience so the next time that thing that stressed you out is going to stress you out, doesn't stress you out anymore. Because now instead of stepping away from that stress, having higher stress resilience means that you're able to step into that stress and go, all right, let's do this, right? I think a lot of us would rather have that. And I think a lot of people are sometimes surprised when they hear me speak. They're like, well, there's that stress researcher, he's going to tell me to lower my stress. And sure, that's a lovely thing. How many people in here have that option? To lower your stress of your work, of your commute, of your spouse, of your kids, of your finances, like all the things that stress us out from a modern society. It's very hard to say, well, wait a minute, I was just about to say, it's very hard to say you could move to an island and live in paradise, but here we are. So, like, that's great. Lower your input of stress as much as possible. But because so many of us live in a life that is defined by high stress input, if we could instead or also increase our resilience to buffer against that stress, that's what a lot of these guys do, okay? I'll say one more important thing too. One thing you'll notice across all the slides and all the products, if you come up and look at the products when we take our break, we use a lot of branded ingredients, right? We're not just using some generic ingredient that's out there, some generic fiber, some generic strain of bacteria. We're using branded ingredients. So that helps us with the science, right? These are all clinically validated in humans to do the thing that we're trying to deliver. Good quality control. We use the ingredients at the levels that have been used in those clinical trials. So that's a really important distinction that a lot of other companies don't have. So anyway, these are different types of structure of fiber. And we also make sure that, you know, we're very focused on what strains we're using. We're very focused on what structures of fiber we're using. And we're very focused on really making sure that they match up with each other so that we can say, okay, here's this fiber. It's going to be a preferred food for these bacteria. This fiber is going to be specific food for these bacteria. This fiber is going to be a specific food for this bacteria. So the reason that we go to those lengths is to make sure that we're giving the right thing and we're giving the right food so that the whole collection has the overall best metabolism. That means these guys are going to survive at a higher rate. It means that their metabolism, their activity is going to be at a higher rate. It means that they're going to be producing more of the compounds that we want at a higher rate. The whole collection is going to work better than if we just decided to give you one and say, all right, we're going to help you with your mood. Okay? So that's some of the sort of nuance that we put into how we select the ingredients and how we combine them. And then this phytobiotic idea, this is something that we invented. So we filed patents all around the globe to protect this idea that you can use specific plant extracts. And here I'm just showing three. This is a blend of three things that we call the gut-brain axis proprietary blend. They're flavonoids or polyphenols that we're extracting from apple fruit, grape seeds, pine bark, and they have effects across the entire gut-brain axis. So we have them in our Mentabiotics product for the gut. We also have the same blend in our MentaFocus product for the brain. We have it in our multivitamin because that's sort of a systemic product, right? Because these effects aren't just gut effects. They're systemic gut-brain axis, heart-brain axis effects. So, you know, you can see what some of those effects are. Sometimes it's working in the gut, sometimes it's working in the brain, sometimes it's working somewhere in that axis. So are there any questions about Mentabiotics? That's just that one gut product, but you can see why it's doing so much more than just gut benefits. Yeah?
Is there a way to know what fibers are in each of those blends?
Yeah. So it says right here. Right here. So each of the fibers, what's in the parentheses here, that isomalto-oligosaccharide, that's the definition of the kind of fiber that we're using here. This galacto-oligosaccharide, or a GOS, is the kind of fiber that Bimuno is, right? And that's important because these have been, I don't think I have this, we did a presentation on a couple of nights ago to just healthcare practitioners, and I went deep into the science of, you know, why are we using GOS and why are we using galactomannan and what bacteria do they feed? And you know, there are studies to show that if you give GOS, you can have a benefit in autism. If you give galactomannan, you can have a benefit in autism. You can have a benefit in ADHD. You can have a benefit in, like, you know, these sort of disease states. I don't talk about that kind of stuff in this sort of a forum, but those slides and that video are posted, right? So you can go to I'll give you my blog site. It's just my name, ShawnTalbott.com. And you can watch, you can download the slides, you can get all the sort of gory details if you want to, okay? All right, so that's what we're doing in the gut. Then remember I said the brain is still an important target. So, you know, we want to do something in the brain. MentaFocus helps with focus, it helps with attention, it helps with alertness, it helps with your memory being at a faster speed, and there's ways that we can measure that. So this is a phytonutrient product. One of the key phytonutrients is this very unique pomegranate extract that can activate areas of the brain. So what you're looking at here is two different brain scans. This is a placebo situation where you can always see a little bit of activity in the brain wherever there's a little bit of electricity or a little bit of blood flow. But in the pomegranate situation, you're seeing the brain is more activated in work, coming up with great ideas or focusing on something or remembering something or thinking. But we're also seeing enhanced activation in areas of the brain that are involved in relaxation or stress resilience. And do those sound like opposites, that you're trying to activate the brain and calm the brain? Don't you think those would fight against each other? And then you get nothing, right? They sort of cancel each other out. Because they happen in different parts of the brain, we're able to do those at the same time. So now what you get is a brain that's ready to do work, but can do it in a focused, engaged way, right? So that's a very different kind of an effect than what you're going to get with an energy drink or a cup of coffee or something like that. Okay, no stimulants in this product. We also use this. So this, again, branded ingredient. This isn't just any generic pine bark. This is enzogenol. We source this from New Zealand. What you're looking at here is different ways we can measure memory. And this is showing that in the enzogenol group versus the control group, the enzogenol group is able to do the memory tests a lot quicker, right? Their brain is faster in these memory tests, right? So in some ways, that's sort of like making your brain work in a more youthful way, kind of an effect. Let me go back to this branded ingredient story for just a second. So we use enzogenol as our pine bark source. I could quite literally go and get a generic pine bark from China and spend 10 times less than what I spend on this from an ingredient perspective. Lots of companies would do that, right? Because all they want to put on their label is pine bark. They just want to say, yeah, we got pine bark. Yeah, and you've probably heard somewhere that pine bark is good for your memory. You've probably heard somewhere that pine bark in a lot of countries is used as first-line ADHD therapy before somebody has to go and look at a Ritalin or an Adderall or something like that. So why wouldn't you buy the $10 pine bark that's generic and being sourced from who knows where versus the New Zealand pine bark that's going to cost you a few dollars more, right? Why would you spend the extra? The reason I spend the extra is because I know this is grown in a pristine area. New Zealand has some of the lowest air pollution and water pollution on the entire planet. So that means that my raw material, that pine tree, is going to be pure. I'm not going to have to go back in and clean it up of hydrocarbons and PCBs and anything that could be there. I also know that a lot of the Chinese material is contaminated with beetle infestations, right? Killing all the pine trees. There are good sources that I could get. I could go and get some of the European sources, right? There's some good sources from France. There's some good sources from Scandinavia. But they extract their pine bark using organic solvents. And you can still detect a little bit of the solvent residue in that finished product, right? So I'm looking at it, I'm like, don't want the beetles. I don't want the air pollution pine bark. I don't want the solvent residue pine bark. What do I have left? I have this. This is extracted with hot water. They basically make a tea out of it, and then they dry the tea, and then I can get that. So that's what I use. And it just happens to be a little bit higher in the active compounds, these things called OPCs, than the French stuff, than the Scandinavian stuff, certainly than the Chinese stuff. So, it's better on all of those different levels. But we do that for every single ingredient in our entire product line, right? Ingredient by ingredient by ingredient. And I think that's just important for you guys to know. Okay, and then the last product in this fundamentals pack is called MentaSync. This is the one that's helping with the signals between those two brains. So if we do something in the gut with mentabiotics, we're going to feel better. If we do something in the brain with MentaFocus, we're going to feel better. But now we can connect those signals more efficiently by addressing what's happening in that axis, and that's what MentaSync works on. It works primarily in two ways. The first way is that it improves the integrity of your gut. If your gut is permeable, doesn't have good integrity, what would we call that? There's a name for it.
Leaky gut.
Leaky gut, exactly. And if you have leaky gut, what's happening?
Garbage is getting into your gut.
That's a great way to say it. If you didn't hear what she said, she goes, garbage is getting into your body, right? So there's things that are supposed to stay in your gut and not get across into your systemic circulation. If you have a leaky gut and things can get across, then you end up having an immune system reaction. You have an inflammatory reaction. That can lead you to feel achy. Leaky gut can very directly lead to things like chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, depression, anxiety, a whole range of sort of non-specific kinds of symptoms in the body. So if we can it can also lead to something called endotoxemia, which is a key reason that people who try to lose weight can't lose weight. Or people who try to lose weight will lose weight to a point and then everything stops. Even if they're on a good diet program, even if they're on a good exercise program, even if they're getting good sleep, their metabolism doesn't seem to budge because they're endotoxemic. And we've shown, we have a clinical trial that we just been accepted for publication, so it's going to be coming out here in the next couple of months, where we showed that if we improved gut integrity, people lost weight without really trying, right? So anyway, I won't get into the weight loss thing too much tonight, but better gut integrity is one way that we do that. Because remember, this is all about signals. If we have a leaky gut, we're sending bad signals into the system. We're sending static into the system. And our brain is going to pick up on that. We're not going to feel good. If we can make sure the gut has good integrity, we're removing that bad signal, so to speak. But then we want to enhance the good signals, and we do that. So the way that we do the leaky gut piece is with things like short-chain fatty acids and nutrients like zinc carnosine. The way that we get the immune system to carry those signals more efficiently are with alpha-glucans that come from mushrooms, and beta-glucan that comes from a specialized yeast extract. Those can help prime the immune system, which means if your immune system is suppressed because you're stressed out or you're sleep deprived or something like that, priming will bring it up to normal. And if you have allergies or food intolerances or autoimmune system conditions, your immune system activity is higher. Priming brings it down to normal. So no matter where you are, you get to that balance point of your immune system. And if you do that by properly priming someone's immune system, that in and of itself improves psychological vigor by about 20%. So just because somebody has better gut integrity and better immune system signaling, they feel 20% better overall than they did before supplementation, right? So again, you're going to feel better in that particular way by taking that particular product. So we put them all together in that pack, fundamentals pack, and we already had really good data on all of those different ingredients to do the mood piece and the stress piece and the focus piece and the memory piece and et cetera, but we wanted to see what that whole recipe looked like when we put it together in the fundamentals pack instead of isolated studies. And so here's one of the studies that we've done. This was published last year in a peer-reviewed journal called Functional Foods for Health and Disease, and you can go to that website and download the journal, read all the details. But just to give you a snapshot of what we did, we recruited those kinds of people I described before that would be in the middle of that mental wellness continuum, what we call healthy, stressed subjects. Really easy to find those people. They're people who have lots of things going on. They're probably not eating a perfect diet. They're probably not getting 8 hours of sleep every night. I can see people smiling now because I'm describing your life. These are people who they're not diagnosed with any sort of problems, right? They're not on pharmaceuticals. They don't have irritable bowel syndrome. They're just in the middle of that mental wellness continuum. And so the challenge, the good side of that is that those people are easy to find, right? It's all of us. The downside of that is that if those people don't have any problem, maybe there's nothing for us to measure, right? So I would guarantee those people, they would be the people, if you asked them, they would say, I'm fine. If you said, do you have any problems? They would go, no, I don't have any problems, I'm all right. So if you don't have a problem like depression that you're trying to change, maybe you're not going to see anything in your clinical trial, right? If there's nothing to change, you're not going to see any results. So those are the people that we got. We had them do our fundamentals for 30 days, and we had them do, is it okay if I'm messing up the display up here? Sorry. We had them do our reboot for 3 days to begin with. So if you order this, the first time you order this, you get the reboot for free. Reboot is a 3-day reset for your microbiome. This product helps you get through that, which sometimes can be challenging for people. You have to eat less processed foods. You eat sort of a vegan-style diet, lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of fiber, that kind of stuff. So we had them do this for 3 days. This just as directed for 30 days. So the whole intervention was 33 days. All right. So, and what you're looking at here is the change that they experienced from baseline, day 0, to the end, day 34, compared to a placebo group. And so what we found on the left-hand side here, you can see pretty clearly their microbiome changed beautifully, right? We have higher levels of lactobacillus, that's one category of good bacteria. Higher levels of bifidobacterium, that's another category of good bacteria. We measure them separately because they're good for different reasons in the gut. We have this composite score that improved 17% over that 1-month intervention, which was a fairly big change in a short duration of time. And this composite score is made up of, we have an algorithm that figures out, all right, what are the good guys doing? What are the bad guys doing? What are the different ratios that we have that are associated with metabolism? What kinds of bacteria are associated with your gut lining and can be a signal for, do you have leaky gut or do you have good gut integrity? All of that kind of stuff goes into this. So your overall microbiome was 17% better. More diverse, more resilience, beautiful, right? But I guarantee you not a single person woke up on day 34 and rolled out of bed and went, oh, my bifidobacterium feels awesome this morning. Let's go, right? You can't feel that. But when you have a better microbiome, what you feel is this. You feel the psychological outcome of that. You feel better, right? And I've been saying this all morning. You're going to feel better. And here, because you were doing something in the brain and something in the gut and something in the axis in all those different ways, you saw people feeling holistically, comprehensively better. All the negative mood states are down significantly, and then that positive mood state vigor is up significantly. So think of it this way. Do you guys know anybody that you could go to and say, you know what, if I could improve your mood and improve your energy levels by half in 30 days, would you be interested in that? I think almost like everybody that I know would be interested in that sort of thing, right? Or their focus, or your ability to just get through your day. Like all of that's going to improve. And people will say sometimes, they're like, that's great. How can you get such a comprehensive effect over here? How can all of these change? Does anyone want to hazard a guess? Like, why are we seeing so much change in a positive direction in terms of how people feel?
Decrease inflammation.
Inflammation is a big part of it. So we change the microbiome, we change how people feel, but what's going on here in the middle? That's what we just did in our last trial, right? Because we did this study, and we went, wow, it really works. And people went, why? Why does it work? We know it works, but why does it work? And that's what's going on in the middle here. So in the last trial, we measured inflammatory markers, down. We measured different ways of looking at oxidation, down. We measured stress hormones, down. We measured blood glucose and cholesterol, down. But then other things that are going up, we're able to see changes, higher levels of short-chain fatty acids. Those are going to be good for the brain and for your metabolism. We're seeing, so here, let's say that you have a better microbiome that now is making more serotonin, neurotransmitter. That's why your depression is going down. Now you have a microbiome that's making more dopamine, motivation. That's why your fatigue is going down. You have a better microbiome that's making more norepinephrine for focus. That's why your confusion is going down. More GABA to help you relax. That's why your tension is going down. You guys get the idea. So I was explaining this one time to a group of people, and there was a guy sitting over sort of on the side, and he was sitting there like this the whole time, like legs crossed, arms crossed, look on his face, like he wasn't buying any of this. And I was saying like, yeah, more serotonin, this, more blah, 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 blah. And he said kind of under his breath, he goes, it's like you have an internal pharmacy. And because he was sitting in the front row, I heard him, and I was like, say that again. That's exactly what's going on here. We have this starting, right? We have this dysfunctional internal pharmacy that's broken, right? It's damaged. It's become damaged by antibiotics. How many people in here have never taken an antibiotic? Not a single hand. Wow. Every once in a while, I'll get someone who puts their hand up, and they're like, nope, never taken an antibiotic. And then I have to break it to them. Do you drink tap water? Do you eat chicken from the grocery store? Have you ever had a fast food hamburger? You've been dosed with antibiotics. You know, so antibiotics, most pharmaceutical medications disrupt the microbiome. Stress levels, anyone who's not getting 8 hours of sleep, you have a damaged microbiome. And so all this stress of our world is damaging that and damaging its ability to do that. And so all we're trying to do with our supplements is try to bring you back to that baseline level that you should have had in the first place. And then people go back to feeling amazing, and we're like, congratulations. That's how you should have been feeling all this time, right? With good stress resilience. So the reason that we get that sort of a level of an effect is because it addresses every level that we currently know scientifically that needs to be balanced across that entire gut-brain axis. So we're presented this data a lot at different scientific conferences. We've published a number of papers at this point. This actually needs to be updated. It says 7 peer-reviewed scientific presentations and publications. It's now more than a dozen. We've got patents pending all around the globe for this sort of an idea because it's such a new area of taking the new science and building it into something that quite literally didn't exist before. Last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to wrap it up, is that, so that's a lot, gut-brain axis, right? We launched that in 2018. We went through 2018, you know, Nutra Award and getting wonderful benefits all across the country. But we're always looking at what the next level of science is. And so we were able to form a heart product that exerts not just a gut-brain axis, but now a heart-brain axis effect to help people feel better. And we came across this, to be perfectly honest with you, a little accidentally, because we looked across our product line and we're like, you know what we don't have is a cardio product, right? Cardiovascular issues are a big problem. People want better heart health. We didn't have anything that did that, right? We had an omega product, but we didn't have anything targeted on heart health. So we started putting together a heart product, but we're like, it has to come back to mental wellness. We're the mental wellness company. So how can we do that, right? We'll figure that out. Maybe it'll be this, because we've known for a long time that these two tissues talk to each other. We know that since the 50s we've known this. Depressed patients have a higher risk of having a heart attack, and heart attack patients have a higher risk of developing depression. And it used to be thought that maybe it was just because they both are overinflamed. You know, inflammation is bad for your heart, it's bad for your brain. It can, you can cause a lot of problems there. But there was probably something else besides just inflammation. So as we started putting together our heart product, we've got really good ingredients. This is bergamot orange to lower your cholesterol. This is black cumin seed oil to help with inflammation. This is palm fruit. There's some bioactives in there that can help with oxidation and free radicals. It can also help with blood pressure. This is astaxanthin that helps with also oxidation and free radical protection, but it can also help with blood flow. This is coenzyme Q10 that helps your heart be better at its contractile function, so it helps with cardiac output and cardiac efficiency. And so these are all good ingredients, but as we started studying them separately and studying them in different combinations, we started finding out this kind of stuff. Your rhythm changes. We can measure heart rhythm using something called heart rate variability. It's sort of a unique way to measure how much stress your heart is under, and we showed that improved. We also started seeing changes in things like this, better electrical signals coming from the heart going to the brain, and as a result of that, we saw increases in this, BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Does anyone know what that does? If you have more BDNF on board, what's your brain doing?
Creating more neurons.
Making brand new neurons, right? And we saw this effect in our subjects who were middle-aged subjects. Imagine, is anyone in here middle-aged? Does anyone here want to grow new brain cells as a middle-aged person? Wouldn't that be awesome? That's the effect that we were seeing here. And as a result of that, we also started seeing, okay, these people are sharper, here's all the biochemistry that's happening, but they felt better. So then we did a trial to show if we can improve physical performance, right? They were able to do more work on a treadmill, do more work on a bicycle ergometer at the same sort of perceived exertion. So these people were doing more work, but it felt easier, right? So performance advantage. they also psychologically felt better. So very similar to that fundamental slide, we're able to show tension was down and fatigue was down and confusion was down and those sorts of things. That particular trial is going to be presented at the American College of Sports Medicine meeting in May. So as soon as that's presented, then we'll do a PDF or something of it and push that out to everybody. So that gives us the opportunity to do this now. We can say to people, do you want to do 2 brains or do you want to do 3 brains, right? And you can do the 4-pack, which is something we call Fundamentals Plus, whatever level you want to go. And that's our product line. I spent most of the time this morning on this, the fundamentals, but this afternoon, what I'm going to talk about more is, so there's the fundamentals pack. The rest of our products are built in families. So I'll give some more details about our Menta Therapeutics, which are very targeted herbal therapies. I told you about the reboot. Here's our energy product. It helps with energy in 3 different ways: physical energy, mental energy, but also mental awareness, so you can sort of connect that energy and engage that energy. Here's our Mood Plus product. This was a finalist for Botanical of the Year in 2018 because it's so comprehensively, from an herbal perspective, helps with stress and anxiety and depression and improves stress resilience, all in the same product. Our Relief Plus product works as effectively to get rid of your pain as ibuprofen or Tylenol on initial usage, but then it keeps it from coming back, so it's got a quick acting and a long lasting effect. Here's our Sleep Plus product. This helps improve sleep quality by about 40%. So that means you spend more time in REM sleep, where your brain recovers, and more time in deep sleep, where your body recovers. No product on the market does that. Ambien doesn't do that. Lunesta doesn't do that. Melatonin doesn't do that. Valerian doesn't do that. This is very, very unique in how it works. And we have the worldwide exclusive on the main ingredient, something called corngrass extract. We have a whole line of products for general nutrition, our Menta Essentials line. So this is vitamins and probiotics, which I mentioned before, different strains of probiotics than what we're using in the mental wellness product. Omega-3 fatty acids, digestive enzymes, all the sort of baseline nutrients that you need to establish that good nutrition foundation. We've got a whole line of products for kids. So everything that I just said about the fundamentals, the right strains, the right fibers, the right phytonutrients, are all built into one product for kids. Not 3 products, just one product. Why do you think we did one product? Because you met kids, obviously, right? Yeah, they don't want 3 products, and they don't want us to have to swallow pills. So this is naturally sweetened, naturally flavored, tastes like fruit punch, so that kids can get that whole gut-brain axis resilience going on. We've got a kids version of our Vita GBX multivitamin, so you're getting bioavailable forms of all the vitamins, all the minerals, all the phytonutrients. This kids mood product, come back this afternoon so I can talk to you about this one. This one is a really, really interesting product. We just did a clinical trial that's going to be presented, what month is it now? February, March, April, in April at the Experimental Biology Conference, where we were able to show that this product, using validated ADHD kinds of surveys, helps these kids in ways that are equivalent to Ritalin or equivalent to Prozac for focus and for mood, right? Works really, really well because of a unique saffron extract that we have in here. So this is a chewable tablet. This is a flavored, naturally flavored powder. And this is what we call a direct-to-mouth powder. You rip it open and dump it in your mouth. So kids love to take it. There's all these Facebook videos when we launched it of, moms giving it to the kids, and the kids are, taking it and asking for more and that kind of stuff. And now it works so well. Parents are seeing the benefit in their kids. We see videos where mom goes, okay, one for you, and one for me. Because it still works for adults. It's just, we make it easy to take for kids. And the last thing is this line of products called GBX Foods. So again, gut-brain axis foods. These are proteins and fruit and vegetable extracts and fibers that do the food piece, right? Those are all food nutrients that we need. But they have a functional aspect to them. So our protein also nourishes the microbiome for all the reasons that I just said that's important. Our superfood gives you 3 servings of fruits and vegetables, so you're closing that gap, but it also lowers your stress. Our seed fiber helps with that gut integrity by giving you very targeted prebiotic fibers, but it also lowers your anxiety, right? So again, these foods that come back to our promise of mental wellness. So across that whole line, we've got products that are going to help you feel better in all of those different ways. And so the only challenge that people have with Amare is trying to figure out which ones to start with. You know, because we'll do a meeting like this, and people get really excited. They're like, all right, I'm going to start on all 22. They sound great. You know, and we go, no, that's not what we're trying to do. If you want to do that, fine. But what we really want people to do is, you know, think back to that mental wellness continuum. Think about where you are. Think about what is your next step, right? Because what we end up seeing, like I've done this work for long enough, where when you see somebody go from just feeling terrible to feeling normal again, that is amazing to see. When you see someone who goes from fine to feeling as good as they've ever felt in their entire life, that is amazing to see, because it's not just a benefit for them, right? It is a benefit for them, right? It's a win, right? They feel better, they're performing better, awesome. But it ripples out from that person in ways that is magical to see. That guy now he's a better dad, he's a better husband, he's a better worker. Same for the mom, same for the family. They're better in their community, they're just better. And it ripples out to everybody around them. And you can see that. People will be like, yeah, he's way better to be around, you know, because he's less stressed and nicer and calmer and all that kind of stuff. And you see that kind of stuff. And so that goes back to this idea of the people piece of it. I just stood up here for an hour, right? We can't tell that story on a 1-inch square label on the shelf of a grocery store, right? It doesn't work that way. These stories need to be told. These stories need to be shared. And this is the avenue that we've chosen to do that. So I'm super, super excited to be here to talk to you guys today. Someone's pointing. You have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you have done any studies on people with PTSD?
We haven't looked at PTSD specifically, but some of the same symptoms that you see with PTSD, the anxiety indexes and depression indexes, are the same kinds of things that we're measuring here. And I would even, so I'll say two things about that. I would hazard a guess that if we did look at those, like, you know, so I'm going to go like this, diseased populations, we'd see an even bigger change, because they have more room to get better. So our numbers would be even better if we looked at those sorts of things. So people will say to me, why don't you do that? Why don't you look at depressed people? Why don't you look at PTSD? Why don't you look at generalized anxiety disorder? And there's a very clear reason. FDA doesn't want us to do that. That's the realm of drugs. Even if I did those trials, right? And some of our ingredients have done those trials. So the saffron that's in here, they've looked at ADHD kids. They've looked at depressed teenagers, right? That kind of stuff. I'm happy to take that data and say, all right, that gives me some good ideas of how I can help everybody without treating diseases. If I were to do that study with kids' mood in ADHD, or I was to take our Mood Plus product and study PTSD and look at soldiers and things like that, the FDA's view of that would be, even if you're not using it in your marketing, even if it's not on your website, as soon as you do the trial, you are making a implied disease claim, right? And so they would look at me and go, you can't do that. You're trying to be a pharmaceutical, and that's only for drugs. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we really strive to like get that healthy population, but the challenge of that sometimes is like, you know, maybe your numbers aren't going to look quite as good, you know. And that's why we encourage people to try it and say, well, see what it does for you, and when you feel it, you can go, yep, that's what I was looking for.
What about Mission 22?
Mission 22 is great. So they're not doing a trial necessarily. So Mission 22, does anyone know what the 22 is in Mission 22? No.
22 suicides a day?
Yeah, 22 suicides a day from veterans. Yeah, so Mission 22 is to get that number down, right? And so what they're doing is they're a charity. They buy a ton of Amare products, and they give it to soldiers with PTSD. And it's, I mean, I'm going to get a little emotional here. It's you would not believe the benefits that they're seeing, right? It's astonishing, the benefits that they're getting there. You know, so that's something where, you know, we do something where we do a discount for them and stuff like that because it's a good cause. But yeah, there's all kinds of stories like that out there. Okay, thank you very much, you guys. I appreciate being here.
Hi, everybody. We have some samples for you to try. I know